One moment can change everything, not like thunder in a clear sky, but like the first ray of sunlight slowly creeping through the curtains, gently touching your cheek and awakening something long forgotten within. Notice this touch. It is quiet, yet persistent, like the breath of a tree in spring. In this quiet touch may lie not so much energy as permission. Permission to have a dream that wants you to awaken. Allow this thought to settle in your chest, like a small flame that doesn't require the brightness of fireworks. It asks for attention. Allow yourself to be surprised that it's not always about more. Sometimes, a desire gently pulls your hand into the morning. The inner issue we tenderly consider here is not that you lack strength, but that your strength is scattered across hundreds of tasks, none of which make your heart tremble. Imagine a field where seeds are scattered around, all different, all needing care. But there is one seed that, as you approach, you can smell, feel warmth, and promise of color. Sometimes, we try to water every patch of soil at once, forgetting that the earth is not infinite, and time is a thin thread that cannot be spilled. Be mindful of your energy expenditure. It is not always in the form of physical vigor. Sometimes it is a subtle pull towards something that brings your eyes back to the fire. Allow yourself to choose. This chapter is an invitation not to sudden decisions, but to quiet listening. Feel how your heart reminds you of what was once a true interest, or how a barely noticeable new idea can warm your palms. There is no reproach here, only pure observation. Perhaps you no longer need moral recharges. Perhaps it is enough to have a dream that wants you to wake up. Notice how your breathing changes at the thought of this. It becomes deeper, softer, like entering a forest in the morning. And in this breath, there is power. A dream is not always loud. Often it is a quiet river that whispers and slowly erodes the shore, changing the landscape of life. If you feel fear of risk, if the thought of failure holds back your steps, allow yourself to acknowledge that fear without shame. It is merely a shadow of the possible. You can look at it like a cloud over a lake. It changes shape, but not the depth of the water. Perhaps it makes sense to choose one endeavor that truly ignites you, one path that resonates in your chest. Not as a challenge to the outside world, but as a response to yourself. This is not about total renunciation of commitments. It's about not going too far down a road that isn't even yours. Let the choice be not a jerk, but a gentle turn, like a branch leaning towards the light. In this moment of speech lies a promise of inner transformation, not a promise of instant strength, but a promise of clarity. When you allow the dream to be the center, things stop demanding every drop of energy from you. They start to align differently, like stones in a river, over which it is easier to walk if you know where to keep your gaze. Trust the process of small movement. One more attempt, even when it's scary. One attempt that doesn't require total disappearance of fear, but simply permission to move forward. Don't rush to evaluate yourself by the amount you've done. Allow yourself to enjoy the barely noticeable pulse in your chest. Notice that motivation is not always a loud call. Sometimes it is the morning light that slowly fills the room. This light can awaken your eyes and hands, making the step possible. Let your dream be that light. Let it not be drama, but quiet determination. And remember, failures do not indicate that you are unmotivated. They indicate the path the road teaches. Let this knowledge be a gentle support, not a judge. Allow yourself to try again. Allow yourself to start small. Motivational breath. Let the light stand by you. Breathe and go. Now is the most appropriate time because now is the only time we have. This simple thought sounds like a tuning fork. It resonates with everything around. The art of finding meaning in every day begins with the ability to count not hours, but moments that leave warmth on the fingertips. Notice how the perspective changes when you stop seeking motivation as something external and start looking within, where quiet desires live. Be close to your little yeses, to those things that make your chest slightly expand and your breath become steady. In such moments, it seems that life is vibrant again. In a world where noise grows like a city street at rush hour, it is important to hear the whisper of your own purpose. This is not about immediately dropping everything and leaving. It's not about drama. It's about the subtle choice, not to scatter on 100 tasks that don't warm the heart, but to notice one that brightens your eyes. Imagine the contrast. A morning where you wake up feeling that you're again and again tackling things because you know the reason why. And a morning where tasks are like a backpack full of stones, and every step is heavy. Feel the difference in your body. One walk is light, the other is strained. Notice how the first gives space for breathing. Why is this important now? Because time flows, and every little distraction takes away part of your focus. But also because the era we live in offers many opportunities, and just as many distracting bright lights. In this context, choice becomes an act of careful attention. Be mindful of where you direct your attention. It will find its way to what you nourish most often. Imagine that attention is water. Where you pour it, that's where it grows. If it flows to many places, then none blooms fully. If, however, the water goes in one direction, a river appears, and with the river comes strength and movement. This text is not about giving quick recipes. It is an invitation to slow exploration. Notice your little side roads, those activities that take more than they give. They are like moss on the underside of a stone, quiet and unnoticed, but over time they change the surface. Allow yourself to look closely. Where does time escape? And where does meaning appear? And not with blame toward yourself, but with gentle curiosity, like to a person who is learning to read the map of their own heart again. Within this journey, there is no place for harsh demands on yourself. There is space for trust and patience. Trust the small steps, their voice that leads you quietly, but surely. The connection with the audience here is in the awareness of the common. Many feel tired from the attempts to be successful in everything, from the striving to conform to others' maps. You are not alone in this feeling of scattering. Imagine people sitting next to a fire. Each has their own log. Each has their own spot of light. But warmth accumulates when the logs are piled together and burn as one flame. This image is about the fact that in life, the multitude of tasks is less important than the depth of a single task. Be honest with yourself. What makes the inner fire blaze? What gives more than it takes? Allow yourself to answer gently and honestly. This chapter is a guide to silence and light. Through contrasts, fatigue and clarity, movement and stillness, chaos and focus, we construct a picture where meaning becomes palpable. Inhale and exhale. Here are like a metronome that brings you back to the rhythm of your own existence. Imagine that each breath brings light, and each exhale takes away the excess. Let this simple rhythm become the measure of your decisions. When a choice seems difficult, take a few slow breaths and notice how your spine straightens, how clarity arrives. Not as magic, but as a natural result of caring for yourself. And finally, a gentle invitation to action without the word do. Be with yourself when choosing a path. Let the choice be not a leap into the unknown, but a step with an open heart, ready to risk in favor of what truly brings light. Remember that failures are not indicators of lack of motivation, but companions on the journey. They teach strength and softness at the same time. Trust your inner light. It knows the path, even if it bends. Motivating breath. Trust the light feeling. Feel the step. There is a difference between tiredness and exhaustion. The former is like an evening after a long day, when you want to lie down and feel your own weight. The latter is like the earth's thigh, where a river has dried up, and it seems that the water will never return. A dream is not always a stream that splashes like a fountain. Often, it is the tart moisture in the soil of the heart, barely perceptible on the fingertips. Feel this difference. Notice where you are awaited not by strength, but by an invitation. This is the beginning, gentle, almost imperceptible. It is like the smell of wet asphalt after rain. Not loud, but promising. Remember the moment when you first felt a spark, not necessarily a huge thing. Perhaps a child's joy from drawing, a quiet pleasure from reading by lamplight, or a sound that touched you like a string. Imagine a small river running among the stones. It does not look at the big streams. It finds its path, flows around obstacles, and slowly carves a channel. I saw a person who lived for many years according to the schedule of someone else's expectations. Work, responsibilities, a to-do list. And one night, sitting by the window, noticed how the moon fell into a teapot. In this simple vision, a dream was born: to open a small workshop where things would be made with love. It was not a business accelerator plan. It was warmer, a desire that asked for hands to get to work. He allowed this dream to grow like a seed in caring soil, not demanding a bright harvest, but nourishing every morning with water of attention. If you are searching for your dream, do not think that you need to seize it with willpower. Allow yourself to witness your own silence. Often, searching is not a race, but listening. Where in the body the heart resonates, where the gaze becomes clearer, where the word must transforms into a soft want. Start with a small observation. Once a day, notice what makes your breath straighten. It could be a short walk, a conversation, a book, or work with your hands. Record these moments as if marking streams of water on the shore. They will show the direction of flow. The practical step here is simple and kind. Carve out 15 minutes to be with what brings gentle excitement. Do not commit to a result. Do not evaluate. Let it be like a morning touch to the face, soft, attentive. If fear comes, remember that fear is a branch over the river. Its presence does not stop the water. Accept fear as part of the landscape and continue to look towards the light. Remember that the energy of a dream often comes not as a flash, but as a gradual filling, a little attention, a little action, a little joy. In this quiet process, there is depth. When you allow yourself to choose based on internal response, life begins to reshape itself. Small preferences, regularly watered, become habits, and habits become a path. Look into the contrasts. What is wasting your energy unnecessarily, and what nourishes you? Imagine that the expenditure of energy is the wind that can either fan the flames or scatter the sparks across the desert. Take part in the choice. Where will you let the wind of your attention blow? Remember that a dream is not just a goal. It is a source that nourishes and restores. Let this moment be the beginning of a gentle exploration. Notice one thing that lights you up a little and start to feed it with attention. Do not demand instant results. Trust the natural flow. Allow the dream to be your small river that you help to flow, step by step. Feel the breath and make a small movement. This is already a path. Risk is often depicted as a bulky leap over an abyss, but in reality, it's closer to stepping on stones in a river's tributary, carefully, with a sense of balance and trust in the footing. An open heart isn't about maximum emotional expression, but about the willingness to embrace both cold and warmth without shutting the windows. When the heart is open, even a small step on an unfamiliar path seems filled with light. Notice this quality within yourself. When you allow softness to lead, fear loses its sharpness and becomes a companion on the journey. I remember a woman who was afraid of public speaking. For her, risk meant standing on stage and speaking while her chest trembled. But her inner turn began with a simple step. She wrote letters about what she cherished and read them to her loved ones. It was safe and required vulnerability at the same time. She shared parts of herself. Over time, those letters became notes. Notes turned into short speeches among friends, and one day, she stepped out to a small audience. Her voice trembled, but it shone with brilliance because risk was accompanied by an open heart. A desire to share, not to prove something to the world. Risk then ceased to be an enemy. It became a bridge along which her words traveled. When you think about risk, notice that it comes in different sorts. There is the kind of risk that drains you, when you detach from yourself for the approval of others. And there is the kind of risk that fills you, when you give part of your time and talent for something that brings light. Practical advice. Distinguish one situation from another gently as you determine what kind of water you need, warm or cold. Ask yourself quietly, does this risk lead me back to myself or take me away from myself? If the answer leans toward returning to yourself, perhaps it's worth a try. Start with a small challenge that doesn't require you to fully expose yourself. For example, share an idea in notes, make a sketch, tell one trusted person about it. Small risks accumulate courage. There's also a deep philosophy in this. Freedom and vulnerability go hand in hand. Space for growth is created when you allow yourself the right to make mistakes without losing your dignity. Failure is not a stigma, but a trace on the path. It speaks of movement, of attempts. Allow yourself to be a student of life, not a student who fears a failing grade. Remember how nature takes risks every year. A seed falls into the ground, not knowing where it will sprout. A tree releases buds, not knowing whether they will meet frost. But there is beauty in this. A willingness to live. And in the willingness to live, there is freedom. Let this feeling be your guide. Risk doesn't have to be insanity. It can be a quiet step towards the light. Open your heart like a window and let fresh air in, without demanding perfect weather inside. Feel the breath and take one small brave step today, not for heroism, but for truth within yourself. Let this be the impulse that moves you forward. Choosing a direction is sometimes like a map drawn by rain on glass. The lines are unclear, the outlines blurry, but if you look closely, you can see paths and lakes. The path to yourself doesn't require a perfect map. It asks for attention to small signs. What catches your eye? Where calm tension arises? What activities create a feeling of time that doesn't pass, but grows? Notice this subtle difference between busyness and presence. One thins out, the other enriches. There was a man who spent his life following the map of parental hopes, a prestigious career, stability, respect. But inside him, something quietly burned for something else, a desire for creativity, to create things you can hold. He didn't abandon everything at once. At first, he allowed himself to do small things in the evenings after work. Sewing bags, crafting ceramics, molding. These little fragments of life became pictures. They decorated a corner of the room. Then, gifts to friends. Later, small sales. In the process, he realized that choosing a direction is not about placing all your efforts into a new job, but about gradually aligning your outer life with your inner sense of self. The path to yourself grows like roots, quietly, deeply, supporting the trunk. The advice here is simple and gentle. Start by recognizing your little yeses. Write down 3 things that bring you pleasure without leaving a feeling of exhaustion. These can be simple actions: a walk in the field, cooking without a recipe, playing with a child, working with your hands. After that, try to integrate these elements into your daily schedule, not as an obligation, but as an experiment. Allow yourself to try for a month and note changes in your mood, in your energy. Sometimes it is the sequence of small attempts that turns uncertainty into inclination. Reflection at this stage is important. The path to yourself is not a linear route, but a signaling network of sensations and small decisions. It is important not to blame yourself for doubts, but to thank them as signposts. Doubt shows the boundaries of the familiar, and beyond these boundaries may lie a new field. Look at fears and hesitations as parts of the landscape, not as obstacles. Note the small things. What music returns your strength? What smell reminds you of home? What activity leaves you feeling fulfilled? These details are like a compass that does not err if read with gentleness. Let choosing a direction become a daily question, not a one-time decision. Each day, take a small step towards what resonates with you. Do not demand instant clarity from yourself. Trust the process of gradual response. And remember, you are not committing forever. You are simply listening and allowing yourself to move towards what is warmer. Make one small choice in favor of yourself today. That is already a path. The subtle difference between defeat and experience is like the difference between a scar and a drawing on a tree bark. One is a mark of pain, the other a testament to life that has gone through times. Failure comes not as a sentence, but as the flesh of a lesson that shapes new lines. Imagine yourself a wanderer, walking on a forest path. Sometimes a step aside is a mistake, sometimes a discovery of a new glade. In both cases, the road changes your map, and this is value, not defeat. I know the story of an artist whose first exhibitions were failures, criticism, empty halls, doubts about his talent. Inside this disappointment, he did not stop in despair. He began to look closer at why his works did not resonate. He realized that he was not speaking to those who were touched by his themes, and that the technique required work. He did not renounce his dream, but allowed himself to learn. He painted in the streets, listened to the audience, experimented with materials. Each failure became like a girth tightening the taut string of his craft. Failures did not destroy his dream. They reformatted it, making it more resilient and clear. A practical piece of advice in this part: treat failures as information, not as a label. When something goes wrong, stop, breathe, and ask yourself a few questions. What can I take away from this experience? What worked, even partially? Where can I change my approach without betraying myself? The answers will not come instantly, but if you treat yourself with gentle curiosity, they will appear. Start small. Write down one thing you learned and one thought on how to try again, a little differently. Small adjustments rarely require great courage, but they change the trajectory. There is another boundary in failure, not to lose yourself in the pursuit of success that is imposed from the outside. Remember that success by someone else's standards can turn out to be empty for your heart. Ensure that the path for which you endure mistakes truly resonates with you. If it does, continue. If not, use the experience to turn in another direction, preserving respect for yourself. True achievement is not a photograph on the cover, but the ability to rise with gratitude for the lessons. Let failures become your teachers, not your judges. Allow yourself to be imperfect, and in this imperfection, wisdom can be found. Make one small attempt today based on what you already know. Let it be a step that does not negate the past, but changes the future. When the heart whispers desire, often what is lacking is not strength, but clarity. Where to place the first spoonful of water so that the seed does not dry out. Here, in the gentle space of practice, simple rituals are offered as a natural part of the day, not as a strict plan, but as self-care. Let these suggestions be an invitation rather than a rule. Try to see them as light bridges from dream to habit. Emotion. Imagine a morning where light touches your palm and a quiet resolution to begin arises in your chest. This feeling is the starting point. Story. I know a person who yearned for creativity for years, but kept postponing it due to busyness. He did not stage a revolution, but gently introduced 4 small rituals. A morning touch to the diary, 15 minutes of working on an idea during lunch, an evening light ritual, turning off screens half an hour before sleep and lighting a reading lamp, and a weekly recap ritual on Sunday evening. After a month, he felt the energy slightly shift direction, not in a fireworks of productivity, but in a calm return of interest to life. This example illustrates that big changes often arise from small consistency. Advice: try to introduce 4 simple rituals that will naturally fit into the day. Morning. Presence ritual. 5 to 10 minutes. Feel the light. Take a few deep breaths. Give yourself permission for a small joy of the day. This is not an instruction, but a gentle invitation to feel that there is your own corner of light in the morning. Write down one thought or even one word that brings warmth. During the day, 15-minute focus. Dedicate 15 minutes to something that brings light excitement, sketching an idea, doodling a melody, trying your hand at drawing. Do not evaluate the result. Just allow the action to happen. Evening. Letting go ritual. 20 to 30 minutes. Create a warm boundary before sleep. The lamp's light. A cup of herbal tea. Writing down 3 small achievements of the day. This helps to preserve energy and create respect for the day lived. Once a week. Reflection and planning ritual. Sit with a notebook. Note one event that warmed you, one failure from which a lesson was learned, and a small idea for the next week. Let this be a gentle conversation with yourself. A micro-action plan for 7 days that you can try on. Day 1. Morning note. 1 word of joy. 15 minutes. trying a simple action. Evening, 3 gratitudes. Days 2 to 3, repeat rituals. Add a small visualization of the dream during the day block for 2 minutes. Day 4, notice body reactions, where relaxation arises, where tension. Note it as a hint. Day 5, dedicate 15 minutes to share an idea with a trusted person. Day 6, take a small risk, a public post, a note in a blog, or telling a friend. Feel how your heart reacts. Day 7, evening reflection ritual. What became easier? What you wanted to change? What small victories deserve a celebration? How to track progress and maintain inspiration. Be attentive to simple indicators. Tracking options that do not turn life into a schedule, but become mirrors. Mood diary, a short entry. Morning, afternoon, evening, and 1 word about your state. After a week, it looks like a map of changes. Jar of small victories. Write down on pieces of paper any little things that brought joy and put them in a jar. At the end of the month, read them as if reading letters from yourself. Visual tracker. Stickers on the calendar. A green sticker means the ritual of the day was completed. The quantity doesn't matter, but the sequence does. So do not worry about missed days. Weekly self-survey. 3 questions. What ignited? What drained energy? What is the next gentle attempt? It's best to ask these questions quietly, like a compass. How to maintain inspiration. Surround yourself with gentle reminders and small sources of light. This could be a music compilation, a playlist for work, a corner with an object that reminds of a dream, or a person who supports. Inspiration is not an eternal resource, but it can be replenished. Small walks, reading a few pages of a book, meetings with those who view the world with curiosity. Consider a weekly replenishing ritual. 2 hours for what nurtures. Visiting a gallery, walking in the park, a masterclass on an interest. How not to lose motivation. Be lenient with misses. A miss is not a failure, but a signal. Instead of condemnation, try softness. Note the reason and offer yourself an adjustment. Reduce the volume. Change the time or format. If feeling tired, allow yourself to rest and recover. If you feel excitement, let it grow naturally. Maintaining motivation is like supporting a fire. It requires not only feeding the flames, but also protection from the wind. Practical tools that can help. A simple notebook for rituals. A calendar with the option to mark days. An app for short notes. A jar for victories. A timer for 15-minute sessions. But remember, a tool is not the goal. It serves the warmth of the dream. Approach the choice of tools with gentle curiosity. What do you like to hold in your hands? What meets everyday life with joy? Maintaining risk and growth. Include one small action that slightly excites you, but does not overwhelm. Let it be an act of delicate boldness, sharing a dream with a friend, publishing a sketch, attending a meeting of interest. Small risks accumulate courage and become bridges from thought to life. To maintain the spirit of exploration, keep a monthly summary, a short entry about what worked, what felt heavy, and what small adjustment you want to make. This provides a sense of purpose while also offering freedom. The goal is soft, like light in a window, not shackles. And finally, a simple but concrete request to yourself. Start today. Let this then be the first small breath of change, not loud, but precise. Feel the lightness of the step, noted in your notebook, And if you wish to stay close on this path, subscribe to the channel and like the video so you won't miss the next day of inspiration. May a quiet phrase of presence remain in your heart. I am walking, and in this, there is peace. Emotion. At the end of the journey, words want to pause and embrace the gentle warmth that has emerged in the chest during the moments of reflection. There will be no loud finale. There will be silence filled with gratitude for allowing yourself to listen. Story. Imagine a person who has spent years seeking affirmation from the outside, until one day he noticed that the true compass was inside. In those small joys he dismissed as trivialities. He stopped turning life into a to-do list and began to perceive days as a series of little points of light. A cup of tea on the balcony, a warming conversation, 15 minutes at work that restored a sense of purpose. These small wonders formed the fabric of a new habit, not because he sought glory, but because he chose to be honest with himself. Advice and reflection. When everything seems complicated, return to your breath and to simple definitions. Ask yourself, what small thing created warmth today? Where did the view become clearer? It is important not to demand instant enlightenment from yourself. It is helpful to allow the process to unfold at its own pace, step by step, like a river gently altering its banks. Let's summarize with the voice that resonated throughout this story. A dream is not a loud call. It is a gentle attraction that requires attention, not force. Risk is not a leap into the abyss. It is a step onto the stones of a tributary with an open heart. Failure is not a stigma, but information that nurtures further growth. Synthesize. Your energy should not scatter across 100 trivialities if there is no fire in your chest for them. Better to allow one task that resonates to receive quiet attention. Small rituals are not a list of duties, but ways to surround the dream with warmth and focus. Tracking progress should not turn the path into work. It is better to see it as a conversation with yourself that helps to understand small changes. And finally, choice is not a judgment, but an opportunity to turn a little toward the light every day. Parting thought. Perhaps the most important thing is not acceleration, but presence. Being with yourself means noticing the ebbs and flows of energy, accepting fear as a warm object in your palm, and letting it go without reproach, allowing failures to be a familiar route rather than a catastrophe. Imagine your life as a garden. You do not plant all the seeds at once. You choose one and care for it, watching it grow, enjoying the scent of the soil. In this garden, there is room for wind, shade, and sunlight. You are not obliged to control everything. You can be a gardener who loves and learns. Emotional message. Let this not be a finale, but a quiet continuation. You have already taken a step, perhaps in the form of a thought, perhaps as a word written in a notebook. Thank yourself for that step. It deserves respect. Allow yourself to feel a mixture of light sadness for what is past and careful joy for what is yet to come. Such a mixture is a sign of life, not its fading. Final image. Imagine an evening when the light becomes soft and you feel that the day has not passed in vain. This feeling is your guide. It is not loud, but it is true. Cherish it like a small cup of warm tea. Sometimes a sip is enough to warm the heart. A small wish and invitation. May the journey continue quietly and steadily. If you want to walk alongside further, be attentive to yourself and let these small movements become your path. And if this thought resonates with you, subscribe to the channel and like the video. This way we will stay close and not miss the next day of inspiration. May the last phrase of this chapter be like a breath after a long walk. I am with myself, and that is enough.